Hey guys, I'm back today with another very interesting topic, the diesel HD truck resale argument. Is it true or is it a myth? And if it is true, what does it actually mean for your wallet? I mean, if you're trying to decide between buying a gas HD truck versus a diesel HD truck, then you already know that the diesel comes with a massive premium. It's typically anywhere from $10,000 to $14,000 or more, right? And so in a previous video, I demonstrated how the fuel savings delivered by diesel trucks, given that they are more fuel efficient than gas, in the end I showed that the diesel fuel savings offer really diminishing returns given that massive cost to upgrade to a diesel. Now, if you didn't catch that video, I'll put a card up and a link below. Definitely watch it first. But in that previous video, I got a ton of comments along the lines of, hey, you forgot about diesel resale value, or you'll make it all back when you go and resell the diesel truck, it being the massive cost to upgrade the diesel in the first place. And these are all great questions, great comments. Guys, I really appreciate the interaction. And to give you a little background information, I've been a diesel HD truck owner for about the last decade or so with 3 different trucks. There was one 3/4 ton Ram and then 2 dualies. One was a Chevy and the other was a Ram. And for me personally, my experience was that I did not make back the additional premium that I spent upgrading to the diesel compared to the gas when I went to sell the trucks years later. In fact, my experience was that I actually lost money on all 3 of the trucks. That was my experience. And so in that previous video showcasing the fuel savings, I didn't factor in resale value because it's a moot point in my opinion. But at the same time, I didn't buy those previous diesel trucks with the intent to save money over their gas counterparts. Nor did I buy the diesel trucks to put myself in a better financial position, one day in the future compared to going gas. Instead, I bought those previous diesel trucks because I needed, or maybe I should say I wanted, the unmatched capabilities and that premium experience that only a diesel truck can deliver. And I was completely okay with spending the $10,000 plus to get all of that. But at the same time, with all the comments I got on that previous video, it made me realize that the diesel resale argument is perhaps a bit overused, and I think it's not clearly explained to the extent that some are misled into thinking that they are, saving money by going diesel. And I'll just clarify that I'm talking primarily about HD trucks here. Thank you, by the way, to all those who pointed out the baby Duramax situation and the half-ton trucks in that previous video. That is I think a very special engine, and I'll plan to do a future video dedicated to just that one. But regardless, I apologize in advance that I wasn't clear in that previous video. And so on that note today, the focus is on HD trucks. Now, to set the stage for today's topic, the diesel resale argument, imagine that you've got a gas truck currently, right? You're looking to upgrade to a diesel HD truck. You're already at the car dealership. You've already done a few negotiations, back and forth with the salesman trying to get the absolute best deal. And this time the general manager, the GM, comes back. He sits down at the table, and the conversation, it goes something like this. General manager says, "I'm really sorry, sir, but this is the best price we can do. But I wanted to point out that gas trucks have poor resale value, and so that's hurting your trade value. But you should know that with you upgrading to this diesel truck, you'll get all that back and more when you go to resell it one day. So you're really making a smart move financially, since diesel trucks have been proven to have better resale value. And so you pay the premium, you upgrade to that diesel truck, and most of us kind of forget about all that resale value talk. Years later, when we go to sell that same truck, we forget about how much we paid. And we just assume that the diesel resale argument is valid in terms of saving us money in the end, when in reality, we should probably be asking that same general manager at the car dealership a question like, how much better is the resale value on the diesel truck, right? Or how much money will I get on the diesel truck compared to the gas when I resell? And even then, if we do ask those questions, oftentimes we're going to get wildly different figures, mostly percentages and such. Like diesel trucks have 30% better resale value, right? I mean, you fill in the number, there are all sorts of numbers floating around out there, but where does that data actually come from? And what does it actually look like when you go to resell later and it hits your wallet? And that is precisely what I want to look at in today's video, because money is real after all. Even if you're financing the vehicle, that is still real money. You may not feel the impact of that initially to your wallet, but over the years you will. And so when you're making a big purchase like an HD truck, I mean, they're expensive enough already, and then there's inflation, right? And so you want to know going into that purchase, how is that going to impact your wallet? Now, that being said, I am not a financial advisor, but I've always struggled with the notion of spending more to save more. In my opinion, if you want to save money, you should spend as little as possible, especially if you're buying a vehicle, because as you know, vehicles, they depreciate in value. Trucks are not investments. They don't go up in value. Well, I guess between COVID and inflation, and all the crazy supply and demand issues that we've seen over the last few years, those basic rules were kind of suspended temporarily, but I think we're, pretty much heading out of that phase and returning more to just the normal values that we've all been accustomed to. And unfortunately, the reality is that cars depreciate in value. And so spending more to save more later on, as in the case of the extra premium with the diesel truck, I've just always struggled with that argument. So what have I done? Well, of course, I've made a spreadsheet here. I love spreadsheets, and I hope you do too. But in this spreadsheet today, I'm going to kind of go back in time, so to speak, and I'm going to demonstrate how two different truck buyers, one who buys a gas truck and another who buys a diesel truck, how those two different purchasers go over time, how they fare over the course of 5 years. Now, there are all sorts of variables and details that I could attempt to capture in this spreadsheet here. It's certainly not all inclusive, as you'll see here in just a few minutes, but I do think it captures the, really the most basic dynamics to help demonstrate how spending more to save more later, it just doesn't pan out. Okay, so with that, let's begin at the top here. And like I said, I started out by going back in time. And so what I did is I scoured Auto Trader to find two near identical HD trucks, same year, same trim level, similar options, similar mileage, and so forth, all those major details, with the only big difference between these two trucks being the gas versus the diesel engine. So notice that both of these trucks are 2020 trucks, meaning likely they were sold, late 2019, early 2020, just before COVID, and all the crazy prices. And then if you look at their original window stickers, you'll see that they're very similar. Again, I tried to get as close as I possibly could practically in terms of options. They're not exact. They're close enough though for this example. And you'll notice that there's just under $9,000 difference on the MSRP. So not $10,000 like there should be, because that's the cost of GM's diesel there, $9,000. But that $8,520 difference, to be exact, is the difference between the two trucks. Remember that number, because we're going to circle back to that in the end. So what you're looking at here first at the top is basically the deal worksheet, similar to a buyer's order when you're at the dealership. And notice how on the gas truck up here, that it has a larger negotiated discount showing up, $6,500, compared to on the diesel over here, a discount of $3,500. Well, why is that? Well, in my experience, I've always found that dealers are willing to give a bigger discount off MSRP on the gas trucks versus the diesel truck. I found that to be true with all the different trucks that I bought and sold. But I do think it's possible to get a discount on a diesel, so I put $3,500 on the diesel, $6,500 off on the gasser right there. So right there, that's a $3,000 differential there. I've got a column here showing kind of that hidden diesel premium. And so there's a $3,000 difference. So right off the top, the diesel truck is essentially another $3,000 more expensive than the gas just based on discounts available. Well, let's continue on in the deal worksheet and look at tag, tax, and title. Of course, that's going to be a variable fee, based on the state that you're in typically. And I just use 7% for the sake of example. But notice on the gas truck, $3,912 for it. Whereas on the diesel truck, because it's a variable rate, a variable fee, $4,719. And so $806 more dollars. Not too bad, right? But let's keep going. Look at the total out the door price. So we've got $59,802 for the gasser, and then $72,129. Now, both Gus, who bought the gasser, and Dean, who bought the diesel, they financed their trucks, as do the majority of Americans. I think I was reading recently that it was either 80 or 85% of Americans finance their vehicles. And so both of them put down a down payment of $30,000. So same down payment between the two. So you can see then the amount financed, $29,802 on the gas versus $42,129 there. We're going to do just a basic car loan, 5%, 60 months there. So you can see the difference in monthly payments, $562 per month for the gas truck. And get this, $795 for the diesel truck. But here's the kicker, right? The finance manager at the dealership, they just want you to look at that monthly payment. You know that. And so you look at it and it's not a big difference, $562 versus $795, right? But thank goodness for the Truth in Lending Act, because they're required to show us the total cost of that loan over its full 5-year life. So you can see on the gasser there, $3,942 in interest alone is what you're paying to finance that $29,000 plus dollars. Where on the diesel, because we're financing more money because it's a more expensive truck, we're spending $5,573 right there. So that's $1,630 more. Okay, so it started out that Dean's diesel truck had a premium of $8,500 roughly over Gus with his gasser truck. But between the discount negotiated, then the tag, tax, and title added on, plus the interest, the difference in interest, that $8,500 premium is now almost a $14,000 premium. And so that grew substantially. And that's really what I wanted to highlight here in this hidden diesel premium column. It really shows you that all those fees, because they're variable based on a more expensive truck, they increase that diesel premium essentially. And it's not so much the fact that the engines are different, as if there's a diesel tax, so to speak. It's the fact that one truck, the diesel truck, has that massive premium over the other truck given the engine upgrade cost. And so that only gets amplified, with all the variable fees that get added on to the vehicle purchase. But let's keep on going. Remember, this worksheet that I just showed you was late 2019, early 2020. So let's keep going all the way to the future, to the present, and see how did these two different trucks impact Gus's bank account and Dean's bank account. And let's just suppose that for the sake of example here, that Gus and Dean both have $100,000 in their bank account. Wouldn't we all like that, right? And so they both start out with the same amount of money. Remember, they put down a down payment of $30,000 on both of their trucks, same amount, right? And so that leaves them with $70,000 in the balance column there. Well, we're going to fast forward through that first year of ownership with Gus, with his monthly payments there times 12, that $562 times 12 right there. He spent $6,749 in monthly payments. Whereas if we go over to Dean with the diesel, you can see his payments were quite a bit more. And so that totaled up to $9,540, times 12 right there, okay? So pretty big difference right there. But then what about maintenance, right? And this is an area where really, I could go to town and try to capture every little aspect of maintenance there is. But in my experience, I found that really with diesel trucks, the maintenance is a little bit more, but it's not just vastly different compared to a gas HD truck, at least in my experience. And so I just factored in the basics like your oil change, your fuel filter change on the diesel, and of course the DEF fluid. And so you can see right there with the gas truck, oil change times 2, $50 each, $100 total there. You know, I do my oil changes myself, so that's about what it costs for me to get synthetic oil in a filter. Whereas on the diesel, it's a little bit more because it uses more oil. I would spend about 80 bucks right there, but I only had to do it once a year because the diesel could go a little bit longer between the oil changes there. Then we got no fuel filter on the gas truck, but on the diesel, we got to do it once a year basically. And so that's about 50 bucks or so. And then with DEF fluid on the diesel, I spent about $72 a year on DEF. It really wasn't that much based on, 12,000 miles per year. But then let's take a look at the annual fuel consumption, right? And this is really what I focused on in that previous video. So again, if you didn't watch that one, I'll put a card up and a link below. Definitely check it out because it goes through that fuel consumption, and I'm basing it off the scenario with 12,000 miles per year. And you can see right there that the gas is at a disadvantage. You spend about $2,714 in fuel, whereas in the diesel, you spend a little bit less at $2,618 because the diesel is more fuel efficient, but yet diesel fuel typically costs more, so it kind of washes out that advantage. All right, so we add all those expenses up, and you'll notice in the balance column for each, Gus with the gasser, his balance is $60,437. Compare that over here to Dean's balance, $57,640. So not a big difference there yet if you're looking at it. But let's just go through the rest of these years and just fast forward. If you need to pause it, you can do so. But basically I'm taking those same costs, the monthly payments, the maintenance like the oil changes, the fuel filter changes, the DEF fluid, the annual fuel consumption, we're just repeating it. Again, just for the sake of simplicity. There are other costs and factors we could try to capture here, but I think if I did all those other costs and factors, it's only gonna make the diesel look worse. And I'm trying to help the diesel case out in this example here, and so I'm just doing those basic ones. So let's skip ahead to year 5, the present, 2024, and look at their ending balances right here. So Gus with the gasser is left with $22,186 in his bank account. And check this out, over here we go to Dean with the diesel truck, and he's got $8,201 remaining. Now that's surprising to us, right? Because a diesel truck, it's supposed to save us money, right? And yet there's about a $14,000 difference between Gus and Dean. And that $14,000 sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Because if we hop back up to the top, look at that total hidden diesel premium right there. It's about $14,000. Well, both trucks are now paid off. It's the end of 5 years. They're interest free. And so both Gus and Dean want to sell their trucks to try to recoup some of that money, right? So check this out. Basically what you're looking at right here are all the real numbers. These are real numbers from the Auto Trader ad on both of these trucks in the present, in 2024. Okay, so both of these trucks are actually for sale, or at least they were for sale at the time of the recording of this video. And those prices that you're seeing right there, the $46,000 and some change and the $54,000, those are the actual asking prices from the dealers selling both of these trucks. Again, we've got the gas truck at $46,564. We've got the diesel truck at $54,750. Now remember, these trucks were both the same trim level, right? They were pretty closely optioned, as closely as I could find at least. The mileage is very similar between the two, and so really the big difference between these two is the gas versus the diesel right there. Now I also included some data points from both Edmunds and KBB. I grayed them out though because in my experience those valuations from the different car sites, they don't always seem to be accurate. Although I will point out the delta, the difference between the two, it does closely follow the original delta, the difference between the gas and the diesel. But you can see right there for the dealer retail price, Edmunds shows $47,700 versus $46,500 is what the dealer's actually asking. Compare that to the diesel, $56,800 is Edmunds, $54,700, so a little bit of a larger gap. But I think the main thing is that the delta, the difference between the two, it fairly closely follows the original MSRP concerning the difference between the gas truck and the diesel right there. So let's just stop and look at the depreciation right there. So with the actual dealer retail price, what it's actually listed for On Auto Trader, 24% depreciation on the gasser with Gus. But then over here on the diesel, we have 22%. I'll talk more about that here in just a minute. But down here, I've got the private party sale price, because Gus and Dean, they want to get the best for their truck, so they're going to sell it privately. And you know, when you're selling a truck privately, you just can't command the same retail price that a dealer can. And so I estimate that they'll both get about 90% of that dealer retail price. I think that's a fair assessment right there. So in other words, Gus, with the gasser, he's going to be selling his truck for $41,908, whereas Dean, with the diesel, he's going to be selling his for $49,275. Okay, so back to the opening question. Does a diesel HD truck have better resale value than a gas truck? And the answer is a resounding yes, absolutely. I completely agree with that, because you can see that the gas truck depreciated 32%. I think that sounds about right for 5 years, whereas the diesel truck depreciated 30%. So it is true, the diesel truck has less depreciation compared to the gas, meaning the diesel wins when it comes to that resale argument. Now, this is where I think the discussion on diesel resale value is a bit misleading, because I don't know about you guys, but it's hard for me to think about my wallet and how much money is in my wallet in terms of a percent. You know, I'm just thinking about real numbers. It's a lot easier for me to understand just real numbers. And so let's go back to our previous screen right there and pick up where we left off. Remember, Gus with his gasser had $22,186 in his bank account, whereas Dean with the diesel had $8,201 in his bank account. So let's add in what both of them sold their trucks for and see what does that do to their bank accounts. And so you can see at the end of 5 years after both of them selling their trucks, with all the different expenses added in, interest and everything else, you can see that Gus with the gasser, he ends up with $64,094 in his account, whereas Dean with the diesel, he ends up with, and this is kind of surprising, $57,476. That's how much they had in their bank accounts after selling the trucks. Again, after owning the trucks for 5 years, all the different costs and expenses associated with them. And so in other words, Gus, who bought and sold the gasser, he ends up with $6,617 more in his bank account compared to Dean, who bought and sold the diesel HD truck. Guys, wait a second. How in the world is that possible? Because we've all been told again and again and again that diesel trucks have better resale value. So why don't we end up with more money in our pockets at the end of that ownership experience, right? Well, here are 4 reasons that I believe explain why Dean with the diesel truck ended up with less money in his bank account at the end. The first one is depreciation. I mean, when was the last time you were at a car dealership and they said, now, remember, that car is going to depreciate, right? They don't talk about that. And so spending more on a depreciating asset, that's the key, right? Spending more on a depreciating asset in order to save more later on, it just doesn't work. All right, then second, there's those hidden costs, right? We looked at this at the very top of the spreadsheet. You know, that more expensive diesel truck, because it's more expensive, it has more hidden variable costs, and therefore it increases the diesel premium. It makes that truck that was already more expensive even more expensive. And then I think there's diminishing returns. And what I mean by that is, although diesel HD trucks, are typically more efficient than gas trucks, we looked at that in the previous video on fuel efficiency, I think that the increased cost of the diesel fuel combined with DEF that you got to pay for, plus the diesel maintenance costs, although it is just a little bit more in my opinion, it really minimizes those potential cost savings found with a diesel HD truck being more efficient. And then guys, really this last one I think is a major factor that's really started to play out over the last, let's say, 5 years. And I could be wrong on this one, but I think the landscape is changing, right? I think that the appeal of the modern diesel engines that have all the different, complex emissions systems, I think the appeal of all that is declining, right? Whereas at the same time, modern gas engines, thanks to Ford with the Godzilla and GM with the LAT, I think they're actually making a comeback and they're becoming more appealing with all their capabilities. And so those four factors, I think, really help explain why Dean with the diesel truck ended up with less money in his bank account after owning the truck for 5 years. So what's the verdict? Well, here's my take on it right here. You should buy a diesel truck if you want the unmatched capabilities, that premium experience that only a diesel truck can deliver. Yes, you'll spend more money, but you're going to get all those benefits in the end. However, buy a gas truck, an HD gas truck, if you want to save money. And another way to think about it is if there's a gas HD truck that can perform the same duties as a diesel HD truck in your specific intended use case, which is going to vary from person to person, then typically that gas HD truck is going to be more cost effective in the end. Cost effective is the key word. It doesn't mean the gas truck is going to do a better job than the diesel. It's just that the gas truck is typically going to be more cost effective. I mean, guys, in my opinion, there is no shame in spending $10,000 or more to get that unmatched performance, that premium experience of the diesel HD truck that only the diesel can deliver. I mean, I think that's a huge factor, especially if you're going to be towing, frequently, or you're towing something extremely heavy, right? But at the same time, don't be misled into thinking that it's a financial move, that somehow going with the diesel is going to put more, money in your pocket one day when you go to sell it. I mean, it's only some $6,000 less in the example here compared to the gas truck owner. And so I wouldn't call it by any means a night and day difference in terms of you're just losing so much money going with that diesel truck, right? But I mean, $6,000 is $6,000. That could be a nice vacation or two. I mean, really, it's an opportunity cost, essentially. And most importantly, don't let a car dealership convince you that somehow by spending more today on a diesel truck that you'll somehow be in a better financial position years down the road compared to a gas truck. Instead, I would say use all this data, if anything, to your advantage, right? So, I mean, if you're buying a diesel truck, and the salesman or the GM, they come out and they use that classic, diesel resale argument as a negotiating tactic, I would ask them a question like, do you have data to support that claim? Or here's another one. Does that mean I'll be richer or poorer 5 years down the road, right? I bet you'll get some very blank and uncomfortable stares if you were to ask that question, because oftentimes we just don't question the classic diesel resale argument. And my hope is really that this information will help you negotiate an even better deal, especially if you're buying a diesel truck. I mean, trucks depreciate in value, and so we got to get the biggest discount that we possibly can, right? And I'll say it again, there is no shame whatsoever in spending the $10,000 or more for that diesel truck, because you're getting the unmatched performance, the premium experience that only a big turbocharged diesel engine can deliver. I've done it myself with 3 trucks. There's no shame in doing that, but just remember that going diesel is typically not going to put you in a stronger financial position, years down the road. Now, let me close by saying this. There's always exceptions, always unique cases. And so do your own research, make a spreadsheet perhaps. And ultimately, you've got to decide what is best for your wallet based on your needs. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. I'd love to hear your comments, so definitely drop them below. Just remember to be respectful to everyone and keep it clean. As always, thanks for watching.